Just fighting.
Alright, I'm just going to share the live stream really quick. Yeah. Yep. It's just a way to reach more people. Yeah, we have 6. Yeah. Live, 50 or 60, 70, but then in replay, we usually have thousands. What's up, brother? We usually have thousands. Yeah. It's fun. Yeah? Yeah, it's good. That seems really fun. I know, right? It's super cool. Hey, nice to see you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, nice to be here.
How's it going? Good, Senator.
We were talking this morning.
You guys stay together?
It's off to a good start.
Whoa. It's a good morning. Good, we got in town like at midnight.
You guys have been going,
Yeah, we took Maya to Seattle and Portland for like a goodbye senior Wednesday. So you guys be with Lee. Yeah. This guy's really brilliant.
Oh, I'm excited.
Have you heard his story at all?
Yeah, we read the little word of always been talking about.
He's got like a 7th grade reading level, math level. He's never even graduated from high school. He was getting a master's degree, and now he wrote a curriculum which used thousands of school districts across the country on how to tap into your resilience to be successful if you don't have all the skills. So inner city, mostly inner city. He's brilliant. He's a talker. He's a hustler. I mean, he brings a little street, kind of street smarts to how to succeed in life. That's good. Let's talk after. If you guys want to go, we'll probably grab lunch with him if you guys want to hang out after. Is the club open on Sunday?
No, it's not. The golf course. Occasionally we'll go to the evenings.
There's some girls' fights for That's exactly good. Well, that's a great idea. Hey, good to see you guys.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
Doing great. You guys had enough? We're getting out of here. Sorry. That's why we set those up later. I think I'm gonna go. I've always wanted to go. It seems like a good
If you were going to go to Uganda, that would be a good trip to go.
Yeah, and I love this podcast. She's like, what would you pursue? I'm like, not really, but I know I met her, you know. She said she likes her. With like a group of people, you know, so it's like
I couldn't agree more with that.
what was the last one? That's why I did that. I'm like, meditation. Our party was like, like that's not all. I'm kind of like,
You guys, we need a recommendation. We just want to do it ourselves. I feel it's just that we haven't had a real sense of how we inheritance is going to keep forward. We have the other part of the piece of which we're going to do. So if you know something. Oh, yeah, yeah. Here locally. Really?
She had a great time in Europe. She ended up, a close friend of hers died while she was in Europe. So that threw off a bit of that. But she hung around, especially for London. She really enjoyed her time in London.
Sparrow?
So did you hear in the paper he was a USC student? She was an RA, really close friends with him, and he died in a plane crash. He was right.
Sparrow. She's actually
do the camera?
Sure.
All I gotta do is just kind of like that.
Follow him where you want.
Yeah, yeah, and me too. And the musician. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to. Do you want to?
But yeah. So the zoom in.
Yep. Yep. Just kind of keep it smooth.
So the musicians if they zoom in.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, like that. Like that. That's right. Is that all right?
Yeah, sure.
All right. I'm going to go to my laptop.
Are you using a mic?
That's a really famous camera you're How you doing? I'm Christian.
Shout out if I forget, shout out. If I forget to call you up, shout out. Wave up. All right, I think we're ready. Ready, Robert? Got the thumbs up from Robert. Hello, everyone in Internet land. All right. Good morning, everyone. It is July 30th. No, it's not July 31st. It's August 14th. The agenda says July 31st. It is August 14th, and welcome to Cache Valley Oasis. My name is John DeLynn, and I'll be your host for today. Super excited to have you all here. There are lots of things you could be doing on a Sunday, so we're glad you're here. Want to welcome anyone who's new. I think I see a few new faces out there. So glad you're here on a Sunday, on a beautiful Sunday. Just a quick introduction to tell you a little bit about what Cache Valley Oasis is. Cache Valley Oasis is one of many organizations or congregations, you could call it, that are spread throughout Utah, and there are a few outside of Utah. But we're basically a secular community dedicated to social interaction, intellectual exploration, and humanitarian service. We encourage respect for all beliefs and non-beliefs, and all are welcome. Our values are as follows. People are more important than beliefs. Reality is known through reason. Meaning comes from making a difference. Human hands solve human problems. And be accepting and be accepted. Those are our values. And again, we're super glad to have you here. We do have some announcements, so I'll make them really quickly. Our next Sunday meeting is August 28th. And they've asked me to speak. So I guess I'm your featured speaker for August 28th. I'm going to be talking, thank you. In my other life, I do mental health counseling, and I'm going to be talking about 6 tips to positive mental health from what I've learned as a psychologist. So I hope you guys will join us. Tell your friends. Let's fill the room if we can. The Monte Cristo campout is coming up this August 19th to 21st. We've reserved a large group site for the Oasis community. There will be stargazing activities and games and more. There's still spots available, so sign up on the Cache Valley Oasis Facebook group event. So there's a Cache Valley Oasis page, which is where we often advertise our events. and just general information. Then there's a group where lots of people join, and I guess there's an event posted in that group where you can sign up for the campout. So please join the group and like the page as well, and bring your friends and family. If you haven't heard, Oasis will be walking on August 27th at the Suicide Prevention Walk in Salt Lake. Most of you may know that there are 4 other Oasis groups here in Utah. Utah Valley, Salt Lake City, kind of northern Wasatch, which I think is kind of Layton, Ogden area, and then there's Park City and Cache Valley. And we're all teaming together to walk at a suicide prevention walk. If you can't walk, but are still interested, you can donate to the cause. All proceeds will go directly to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Cache Valley Oasis has the goal of raising $1,000. More details can be found on our Oasis Facebook page. Let's bring up Caprice really quick for an announcement. Let's give Caprice a warm welcome.
So I was just going to add about the suicide prevention walk that we're planning on carpooling there in the morning, like beforehand on Saturday, and we're going to post like the details about that at a later time. But we'd love to have as many of you that can show up, because then we can represent, you know, our community, and it'll be a really good time. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, lastly, if you brought kids for the children's room, we ask that if you're able to please make a few dollars of donation per child. We're paying the sitters there, and it's great when people are able to support that service to come and watch the children. Amelia Goodkey is about to come up. She'll raise her hand as well. She's someone you can give those donations to jointly. All right. Our musical program today will consist of our special musical guest, Nick Welch. So without further ado, we welcome Nick to the stage.
Good morning. Is that good? Oh, that's good. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Wake up, it's almost noon, you're sleeping. One more disaster, and the sun came up too soon. Oh, I don't know what's in store tomorrow. Count all your lucky stars, you still have tonight. trace your footsteps in time, come back around. Someday, someday you will find the irony in counting yourself to sleep. This is all a dream. This is all a dream.
I swear we have the best music in Utah. Is that true? Every time I'm like, whoa, where are these guys coming from? I think it's, I'm not sure, but I think Amy is a coordinator of music. I want to thank her for, she's not here right now, but I want to thank her for that. All right, so one of the traditions that we have on these Sunday meetings is to begin after a musical number and announcements with the community moment. And the community moment is really just someone from our community who comes up and shares just a thought or a story or something really simple. It's usually no more than 10 minutes, it can be 5 minutes. And we had, the person that we had scheduled for a community moment wasn't able to be here. They had to drop out last minute. And so we're super grateful that Amelia Goodkey was willing to pinch hit and come up with something this morning. So Amelia is going to give us our community moment. So come on up, Amelia. Thank you.
Aloha. I'm just kidding, I'm not Hawaiian, I'm Panamanian. Anyway, I'm really excited to be here. My name's Amelia Goodkey, and I coordinate the kids' room. And I just want to say, at first we were trying to have all the parents kind of rotate through there, and then the Presbyterians gave me this great idea to pay a girl to do that, and it's been fantastic. So thank you to all of you who bring your kids and enjoy the meetings and donate to that. So thank you. I'm from Logan. I was born in Germany on an army base, and then I've lived in Logan most of my life. So that's a little bit about me. I live in River Heights with my husband and 3 kids, and I am currently getting my bachelor's degree at Utah State in social work. So, woo!
Yay.
People are like, that's so amazing, you're so brave. I'm like, it's so amazing that I didn't finish school when I was, like, the first time. Whatever, great. Anyway, so when John said that I came up with something really quickly, that is a stretch because the thing that comes out of my mouth is original. Everything I say is derivative because there's just so many great things in the world. I have a couple of original thoughts, but not today. Today I'm going to talk about, so I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to, I think one of my very favorite podcasts is called TED Radio Hour. And so, anybody? Yes? Okay. TED Radio Hour is great because they take one subject from the TED Talks and they take like 3 or 4 speakers on that one subject. And so it's just this fantastic hour just committed to that one subject. So I really love it. And anyway, so this woman, this researcher, I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of this to get her name. One second. So she's a German psychology, researcher and professor, and her name is Gabrielle, I'm going to slaughter her last name, Oettingen. I'll post a little bit about her on the website. So her name is Gabrielle, and she's from Germany, but she studies in New York. She talks a lot about healthy habits and psychology. She and her team over the past 20 years have come up with a strategy for accomplishing goals, and it's called mental contrasting,
with implementation intention, so MCII. I'm going to say it again. Mental contrasting with implementation intentions. So they have developed this data over the past 20 years, but instead of using that big long scientific term, she calls it WOOP. So WOOP, WOOP. And so listening to her talk about it on the podcast was fantastic, and I'm just going to really quickly recap it for you because it's something that I love to listen to, and I've listened to it a few times because it's really a very simple way to try to accomplish little goals, big goals in your life. So I'm talking as I'm trying to find the WOOP. So as I find it, I'm going to tell you that I know the W. The first W is wish. So what I'm just going to kind of recap what she said in her podcast interview. So everybody think about a wish you have that you want to accomplish in the next 24 hours, or the next week, or the next month. So let's just keep it really simple. So if everybody has that wish, then you go on to the O. So first you have your wish, then you think about your outcome. Okay, so I'm going to give the example she gave. So the wish would be, I'm happily married, but let's say I had a wish when I was 20 to go on a date with this cute boy that I saw in class. So that's my wish. My outcome is, the greatest outcome I can think of is we're going to go on a date, we're going to have a really nice time, and we're going to connect, and we're going to, have a really great date. So I've got my wish, I've got my outcome. Then you've got your obstacle. Now, so this is the second O in WOOP, is your obstacle, but it's not an exterior obstacle. It's what is it in me that is going to keep me from obtaining this outcome? Because you can't focus on, you can't change the things around you. You can only change yourself. So what is it in me that's going to keep me from obtaining this outcome? Is it that I'm not very eloquent in the way I speak, or I'm a little anxious, or I talk too much about my sisters, which I was just doing to John Dylan because I have 6 sisters. I do that a lot. Is it that what are the things that are going to keep me from obtaining this outcome? And then, let's see, wish, outcome, obstacle, plan. Okay, the P is the plan. Okay, so you've got your WOO, and then the P is the plan of what I'm going to try to change about the obstacle to get back to the outcome. So, WOOP, WOOP. They've got, of course, an app, and I've been using it, and the developer, Gabrielle, she says she uses it every day in her research, and her lectures, and in her personal life, and this is just something that I really love, and I thought it really hopefully goes hand in hand with what we're going to hear today about resiliency from Christians. So, nice to meet you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Amelia. That was awesome. Thanks for that, too. All right. Before we bring Christian up, we're going to have one more awesome song. So let's bring Nick back up for another song. Let's give it a
Well, you guys are awesome, and I just want to say thanks for having me to your organization. This is super cool. I've been here before, but I quite enjoyed this. So. Can you hear me okay? The volume's alright? I don't be too loud. Okay. If you know this, you sing along with me. Someday
get the privilege of introducing my dear friend, Christian Moore. So just to read his introduction, Christian Moore is a renowned speaker, youth advocate, and licensed clinical social worker. He's the author of the highly acclaimed book, everyone knows the book, raise it high, called The Resilience Breakthrough, 27 Tools for Turning Adversity into Action. Christian spent most of his childhood years on the streets near Washington, D.C. Due to learning disabilities, counselors informed him that college wasn't an option. And one of his greatest lessons in resilience was fighting his way to a master's degree. As a social worker in education, youth corrections, and a homeless program, Christian saw the need for a new approach and became the founder of the Why Try program, a social and emotional education curriculum delivered to over 3 million students in 22,000 organizations worldwide. He now speaks at over 100 events a year and consults with thousands of school districts on lowering dropout rates, improving school climate, and boosting resilience through social and emotional education. That's the blurb. I've been able to know Christian just as a dear friend and a great guy. He is a really gifted speaker. He can talk for hours, so he's going to be showing a lot of restraint today by keeping it to like 30 or 45 minutes. But literally, people pay him hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to go all over the country to speak. So we're just really, really honored that he and his wonderful family have joined us today to speak to us here at Cache Valley. He's also someone who has a lot of courage and integrity, and I think his wife does as well. So let's give a warm Cache Valley Oasis welcome to Christian Moore.
Stood up, I realized my pants are falling off, so see how smooth I did that? Great intro to a speech here. All right. Well, I'll tell you when John was introducing the values of Oasis and kind of the mission of what you guys do here, I was thinking to myself, wow, this is a place I'm very proud to bring my children to. I haven't brought my children to a setting like this, an enlightenment type of setting for a while. This is definitely an environment I'm very comfortable. And the other thing I was thinking is, I've been on the road speaking for about 18 years. I've had the opportunity to speak in literally tens of thousands of venues all over the world. I've spoken in all 50 states, and as I was listening to the incredible music, if y'all can give him a hand again for that. Because I was thinking to myself, wow, out of all the environments I've ever spoken in, I'm probably most comfortable speaking right now than I've ever been from my own, from who I am. So I feel like I'm really home right now. So, man, I wish I could move my family up here to Logan. Holy cow, this is a great group of people and the values that I can really get behind and hold up. So a lot of times when people say it's truly an honor to be somewhere to speak, this is truly an honor for me to be here. And people who are putting in this complex world these type of values out into this world is so important right now. Usually someone gets invited to speak at a workshop like this or a setting like this because they've accomplished some great thing in their life. They've had tremendous success or done something, so that's usually what opens the door for them to speak. I got the opportunity to speak for the complete opposite reason. My first speeches, they brought me in because I was one of the world-renowned leading experts on what I call the 2 F's, fear and failure. I attended the University of Adversity. And when you attend the University of Adversity, you better learn resilience really, really quick. So I want to share with you all kind of how I became so interested in the subject matter of resilience and even dedicating my life's work to the subject matter of resilience. My interest in resilience really kind of comes out of my own life experience. John shared with you, I grew up outside of Washington, D.C. I grew up in a family of 12 kids. My mom got married really, really young, got a divorce. She met a man who had 6 kids. His wife had just left him with 6 kids and never came back. Now I'm a psychotherapist. I realized I might have been a hint to my mom. That's another workshop. They get married and have 4 more kids. I'm the 8th child in this family of 12. My mom was just a little bit overwhelmed with these 12 kids. So my mom has something called social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder. My mom had a fear of leaving the house. You have to leave the house to get food, so there wasn't a lot of food to eat in my house. Growing up, there's usually pickles, olives, and tuna fish. I'm going to write a cookbook one day, 101 ways how to eat those 3 things. Next person to tell you a little bit about is my dad. My dad's one of the most interesting people in the world. He graduated from high school 2 years early. You know, he's not my biological dad. I probably have a higher IQ. You know, I was diagnosed with learning disabilities, severe learning disabilities, pretty young. And learning disabilities are very genetic. When I was 17 years old, I was illiterate. And for years, my wife and my kids were really young. She would read to my kids all the time. And I think I was reading to your kids on 20, 30 minutes a day. She'd read to them an hour, 2 hours a day. I'm like, when you can put the books away? We got 17 years before these kids are going to learn how to read. And she didn't find that funny either. But they both read now. They read really, really well. But my dad, like I said, graduated 2 years early, goes to work for the U.S. Postal Service, sorting mail in Arlington, Virginia. And the U.S. Postal Service could tell he had a tremendous talent. You could say to him 5,898 times 10,852, and he can instantly rattle that off the top of his head. Has anybody ever seen the movie Rain Man or Beautiful Mind? Especially ever seen the movie Beautiful Mind? You've met my dad. On my dad's 18th birthday, 2 gentlemen pull up in front of the U.S. Postal Service and drive him to a place called Fort Meade, Maryland. Anybody know what's on Fort Meade, Maryland? There's a place called NSA, the National Security Agency. And my dad becomes a GS-16 code breaker. That's the highest level spy, the highest level cryptanalyst you can become. I'm going to write a book one day, Son of Spy. But I don't know if you've ever been around a genius before. They used to lack 2 things, common sense and social skills. And I realized my dad's autistic, so visualize this home life. I have an autistic dad who's a code breaker at NSA. And he had just joined the LDS church a little bit before I came to his life. And then I have a mom with social phobia, generalized anxiety disorder. It's very, her anxieties. I had ADHD, conduct disorder, severe learning disabilities. My mom had this fear of leaving the house. And so to say there was a few challenges in my home life is an understatement. Because my parents' mental health issues, I was a street kid. I could hang out till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning on a school night. There was almost very little rules. The best way to describe my childhood is like a kite flying in the air. If you cut the string on the kite, what would the kite do? It'd blow away for a few feet. It would come crashing to the ground. And my metaphor, that string represents laws and rules. I grew up pretty much with no laws, no rules. So I spent the first part of my life coming down and crashing really, really hard. I'd stay up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. On a school night, I hang out with kids my own age till 5, 6 o'clock at night. Then who do you think I ran around with after that? The older kids. The older kids quickly introduced me to the urban pharmaceutical industry. They would put all the drugs on me because I was a cute little white kid with curly hair and dimples in predominantly African-American community. What did they know? They knew I would never be checked. Now, they also created a safety net around me. They're like, Christian, if you use drugs, we'll kill you. If anybody messes with you, we'll kill them. So I was the safest child in America. Like my own mafia, my own support system. I was this little white kid with tons of attitude, tons of disrespect. I'd be like, what are you looking at? If a kid wanted to fight me, they would tell all the other kids, would say, do not touch him. The entire African-American community in this area will kill you if you touch this child. So I was highly, highly safe. The police would roll up on us. I was the diversion. I'd run over and talk to the police. The police would hand me Washington Redskin football cards and take me home. Even though I had all the drugs on me, the police never checked me because I was this cute little white kid with curly hair and dimples. So by the time I was 7 years old, everybody catch that age? 7 years old, I became highly, highly aware of social injustice in the United States. It's definitely what inspired me to become a social worker and do some of the work I'm doing around the world. Well, one night I was out late at night, and a car pulled up. The windows on the car slowly rolled down. The neighborhood I grew up, I guess we can do when that happens. You run or duck, and I heard a voice. And the voice I heard was the voice of this woman right here, who I endearingly call Mama Jackson. Now, see if you can figure out who I am in the picture. On the way to the left, that's me, my Washington Redskins Sears catalog coat. That was back in the early 70s, early 70s. And when the Redskins used to win, they struggled the last few years. That's my buddy Sean. I go hang out with Sean till 5, 6 o'clock at night. Because Mama Jackson knew what all good moms know. We were children hang out with, it's going to have a tremendous impact on their future. Well, a couple days later, I'm walking to school. Luckily, Sean had explained to his mom a little bit of the reality of my situation. He's like, look, Mom, I go to Christian's house. They hardly have any furniture in the house. They have no pictures up on the wall. There's a lot of yelling, a lot of fighting. Depending on what my mom's mental health was, she washed my sheets for me every night. My wife has not caught the vision of that when he makes me sleep in the same sheets more than one night. She heard me say this the other day in the conference. She's like, you can wash your own damn sheets. Anyway, so Sean explained some of this bizarreness to his mom. A couple days later, I'm walking to school, and Mama Jackson comes flying out of her house in this blue bathrobe. You know, how you remember some things from your childhood like they're yesterday? If their life changes, she's like, I'll tell you what, if you'll start going to school every day, I want to see your report cards. If you start answering to me, you come eat in our house anytime you want. Now, Mama Jackson's a seriously good cook. That's the real reason why I'm in top physical condition right now. All right, that's when you should be laughing at us. So it's pretty much an informal foster care situation. She took over and started raising me. Well, long story short, she gave me the tools to graduate from college with a 6th grade math level, a 7th grade reading writing level. I'm not saying that's significant to you, but in the U.S., only 2% of my peers in special ed get a bachelor's degree, and 0.5%, not even 1%, get a master's degree. So statistically, I had a better chance of playing the NBA, becoming LeBron James, than stand up here right now and talking to you all. So if I get a little fired up, it's because 99.5% of my peers in special ed don't get the opportunity that I received to get a master's degree. So I definitely have a debt to pay to society. I did my thesis in graduate school looking at the impact that learning disabilities has on poverty and crime. I learned that over 70% of kids in our youth correction system have learning differences, over 80% adult prison population. You know, over 70% people on TANF on public assistance. You know, during this election season, when you hear politicians talking about welfare reform and stuff, did you ever hear them mention learning disabilities? When I run for president, you're going to hear about it. Actually, I'd like to make my announcement right now here at Logan. So the highlight of my life was, I wish I could tell you all the details of the whole story, but basically, when I got my college degree, Mama Jackson got on an airplane, flew 2,000 miles across the United States, and was sitting on the 10th row in the Marriott Center at Brigham Young University with him, my MSW. When I saw her in that audience, by the way, she was very easy to spot in that audience. I thought to myself, when I saw her, I thought, before I'm 6 feet under, I'm going to make sure every child in America has access to the social and emotional education she gave me. I haven't reached every child yet, but like I said, for over 3 million students through the social and emotional education that she gave me access to. And I taught a program for years in the schools on social and emotional education. You know, what motivates someone to put one foot in front of another? You know, EQ is the ability to understand your own emotions and the emotions of others. And I've taught these principles for years in the schools, and people started asking me, but, okay, Christian, kids understand some of your metaphors. I would teach everything, having a visual delivery system here. I'm not going to go into depth here, but you can just kind of see some of the principles. This is a tribute to my home state of Maryland. I'll say they put a bunch of crabs in a pot. If you don't put a lid on the pot, you know, why can't the crabs get out of the pot? Because the other crabs will reach out and pull them down. So I'll say, hey, your friends you're skipping school with, you're doing drugs with, fighting, they're just pulling you down to keep each other apart. So I taught these principles for years, and people would come up to me and say, look, Christian, what motivates one person? You know, what motivates one person doesn't seem to motivate another person. Where does the inner motivation come from to not give up? Anybody be interested in knowing that? You know, where's resilience born? Where does it come from? As I worked across the country, I saw tens of thousands of kids overcome some of the most difficult streets, difficult neighborhoods, and I started thinking, man, what are they tapping into? What resources are they accessing? In college, I learned something about, there was a 20-year study in Hawaii called the Kauai Resiliency Project, and they found one of the biggest X factors. Now, 2 kids grew up in the same home, same neighborhood, same background. One kid makes out, the other kid doesn't make it. What's the X factor? They saw resiliency was a huge X factor. So when I learned that in graduate school, I said, why don't we teach people where resiliency comes from? I remember my professors telling me, well, what works with one person is not going to work with another person. We can't figure out where it's born. We can figure out the attributes of resilience, like hard work, determination, perseverance. I had read hundreds of books on resilience, but I was frustrated because they would tell me the attributes, like say, perseverance, focus, hard work, all these things. But I want to know, where does it come from within? And that's what I focused on with this project, the Resilience Breakthrough. Now, imagine living in a world where we had a prescription for resilience. And that was my dream. Can we literally pinpoint, what motivates somebody like John DeLynn? What motivates some person that goes to the extreme to make something happen, to create change in the world, or even change in their own life? What causes people to really push through? And we identified a couple different things that people, we look at literally thousands of people, we identified there were certain things that they were tapping into. Now, just for the sake of this, if I was gonna die tomorrow, that sounds morbid, and someone said to me, what's the last advice you would give your two boys, Cooper and Carson? I would tell them the second greatest principle in the world, the second most powerful thing I've ever come across in my life is the ability to have opposition and see that opposition as a reason not to give up, to be resilient, to bounce back. That's the second most powerful thing. When I went to publish the book, I said to the publisher, I want to name the book the second greatest principle in the world. They looked at me like I was crazy. They're like, Christian, you live in America. Do you think anybody cares what the second greatest principle in the world is? In America, everybody wants to know what's number one, what's the greatest principle in the world. So if resilience is the second greatest principle in the world, one thing that gives us an incredible amount of fuel to be resilient is something the Beatles sang about several years ago. The Beatles got a record that said, all you need is love. Love is the most powerful thing. In my 46 years on planet Earth, that's the most powerful thing. I do realize there may have been some teachers before the Beatles that taught love, but I give credit to the Beatles. So, love for my kids, love for my wife. Oftentimes that's the fuel to push through, to put one foot in front of another. That interrelation. Human beings, we know, are motivated by other human beings. Now, in the book, we define resilience as this. Resilience is the ability to bounce back when you have every reason to shut down. You don't have to raise your hand. Has anybody here ever felt like giving up and shutting down? It's the human condition. We all sometimes will feel like shutting down. Resilient people have both tapped and untapped reserves. What I mean by untapped reserves, John actually alluded to it when he introduced me. I had two talents growing up. I could talk nonstop, and I could draw really good. So guess how I make a living today? I took everything in mental health, put it into pictures, and I continue to talk nonstop. In Maryland, they have corporal punishment. They beat me with a wood paddle when I was sent to the principal's office. Now I realize the principal should have put the wood paddle down and said to me, the greatest fear in the world is what, pretty much? What's the greatest, highest pressure situation a person can find themselves in? Public speaking is they say it's the highest. He should have said, you have a gift for this. This might be a resource. He should have celebrated some of my talents instead of beating me with a wood paddle. I'll give you an example as a therapist. When I diagnose a child with ADHD, conduct disorder, learning disabilities, I bring a cake into my office, and I light the candles on the cake. I'll pass out those party hats, those things to blow out, and I'll literally have a party. I'll say ADHD is the greatest diagnosis in the world. We live in a fast-paced society. People would kill to have this energy. I'm going to show you how to use the ADHD as your best friend. So mom and dad would walk out with a hop in their step. They interact with the child differently. I say, look, mom and dad, look, 70% of CEOs in America, guess what they have? ADHD. They work 100-hour work weeks. They put an incredible amount of time on being entrepreneurs. So everybody with me on that? Because most of the social problems that present to me, I don't know how to get rid of it. All I know how to do is to show them how to use it as their best friend. I'll show it to you how we do this real quick here. Now, what I love about resilience is the great equalizer. It transcends race, culture, socioeconomic status. Now, I spent 8 years in college, $65,000 studying something called positive psychology. What we say to ourselves is going to lead to our actions, it's going to lead to our behaviors. So we probably want to say really positive things to ourselves. In general, we want to be really, really, really positive. And so I started noticing something. I started reading hundreds of biographies as I started traveling. At the time, I started reading all these books, just devouring biographies. And I would highlight in the biography the minute I saw them trying to make their transition. What was causing them to make their transition? And I noticed 99% of the time, I was not seeing any positive self-talk. I remember reading Christopher Reeve's biography. He was paralyzed. He was suicidal, wanted to give up, and his wife, begged him not to commit suicide. And he just starts talking about a conversation him and his wife had on how he was going to take that anger, take that rage, and the pain he was feeling, and not give up and try to make a difference. And I can always have a hard time saying this word, paralysis, the paralysis community. And he used that. Oprah, I read her biography. She took being sexually abused and then hurt and the anger of that, and created a productive outcome with it. She talked about that moment was a life-changing moment for her. And what I realized is all of us have a switch. It's like this gas pump right here. If I want to flip the switch on this gas pump, there's an important question I have to ask myself. You have to flip the switch to get this fuel out. Well, I realized one of the first things we have to ask ourselves to be resilient is how can we use this problem as our best friend? How can we convert this pain into the energy, into the fuel to not give up? There really isn't a third option. We have a challenge that's going to become the worst thing to happen to us. It's become the best thing to happen to us. Now, nobody can flip the switch all the time. All we can do is to try to flip the switch in the reality of where we're standing, the reality of how much money we have in the bank, and the reality of our own mental health state, and the reality of maybe our anxiety or our depression. But if we've done that, all we can do is flip the switch where we stand the best we can. And what I realized was there's this huge energy that we can tap in. Most of my life, I've dealt with all these things, guilt, frustration, fear, anxiety, loneliness, anger. And most of my life, these things kicked my butt. And at about 40 years old, I started realizing, wait, because of these feelings, I can use these feelings as a reason to put one foot in front of another. Give you an example. This morning, I looked in the mirror, and my son Carson's going to laugh because literally this morning, the irony of it was unbelievable. I looked in the mirror this morning, and I'm like, my hairline's receding, I'm getting shorter, fatter, goofier. So I said, you know what? I'm going to try to give a better speech because of that today. Anybody here besides me have negative emotions? Negative self-talk? It's the human condition. We all do. And my son came over, I kid you not, like 5 minutes after that, he came over to me and started rubbing my head right here. And he goes, Daddy, you're losing your hair. Remember that part? And I was just laughing like 45 minutes ago. It's great. I'm like, wow, I was just thinking about that. Thanks. But I said, but that's the human condition. I'm not just full of positive self-talk. So it says I have negative emotions like all human beings. And the ability to tap into both your positive emotions and your negative emotions gives you a resilience advantage. If I was Anthony Robbins or Covey and I was just giving a motivational speech, I would only talk to you all about what? Positive emotion, positive self-talk. But is this workshop today on being successful? No. It's on the ability to bounce back. I would much rather my two boys, Cooper and Carson, know how to bounce back during the lows of life than being, quote, successful. Because success is fleeting. Success comes and goes. I think this is a higher principle. So let me show you how we teach this concept right here where I'm working with different organizations. I have a metaphor here of a battery. Could you charge this battery with just a positive connection with a battery charge? Could you charge this battery with just a negative connection with a battery charge? Now, it's the combination of the positive and negative. I met a man the other day, blew me out of the water. He told me a story where his 17-year-old son was killed by a 23-year-old, killed his son in a drunk driving accident. And he experienced, he was very upset, huge rage. First he wanted revenge on the kid, was so frustrated. And he kept driving by the jail where his son where his the guy who killed his son was sitting in his jail. And he finally pulls his car in, goes and meets with the kid and says, listen, if you're experiencing half the pain I'm feeling, I can't even imagine this pain. I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to go through the legal process with you. Not that. And he became best friends with this kid. And sort of, now, I don't know if someone killed my child like that. I don't know if I'd have the strength to do that. But do human beings have the ability to do that? Absolutely. Because we have to look at what happened during the Holocaust. Look at history. People have this ability to flip the switch. The question is, are they even aware they have the switch to flip? I would argue the first 36 years of my life, even though I was a clinical social worker, I wasn't even aware, does that make sense, that I had the switch within me to flip, to even ask myself, how can I use this pain as my best friend? And so, if being being successful for me was dependent upon feeling happy, at peace, motivated, optimism, and feeling love and trust, I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. It obviously called reactive attachment disorder. You learn to attach to your parents. You learn human connection through this attachment to your parents. So I didn't have a lot of that human connection. So for me, I've had to tap into anger, frustration, sadness, guilt, depression, regret. I've had to take those emotions and use them as the fuel to put one foot in front of another. Now, ideally, I want to use both. Everybody, I'm not minimizing the importance of positive self-talk. If you can tap into it and knock yourself out, the perfect storm, of course, I would like someone to be 80% positive self-talk and 20%, negative. But for many people, raise your hand. Anybody know, or yourself, or know other people where it's the opposite? Absolutely. Where they have incredible amount of negative emotion. The question is, can you learn to create a productive outcome? Because all emotion is energy. And the ability to take that energy, that emotion, and create productive outcomes. So there's 4 places that we want people to tap into. So it's one thing for me to teach this, but how do we do that? What are the specific things we need to tap into? There's 4 areas. I'm going to highlight these. There's going to be a Reader's Digest version of highlighting these 4 areas. The first area that we have to tap into to kind of channel whether it's a positive emotion or a negative emotion is something we call relational resilience. Here's a picture of my 2 kids, Cooper and Carson. Now, if I never got invited to speak again, I would literally go work at 4 different McDonald's because these 2 kids are dependent upon me. It has huge influence on me putting one foot in front of another. Your greatest motivation to not give up is the knowledge that others need you or depend on you. It's interesting, when I speak to educators, I'll say, write down 5 or 6 people who you need and need you. They have no problem. They'll write down sometimes 10 or even more. When I ask inmates that same question, I'll say, write down, 2 or 3 people that you completely need and they completely need you. Guess what most inmates write down? 1 or less. I'm not saying that's the only reason why you're in this room right now and not in prison, but it is an X factor. Does that make sense? We're starting to realize if you want to increase your resilience, the fastest thing you can do to increase your resilience is have other people need you and you need them. Now, I'll tell you, one of the most relationally resilient people I know, you probably can get mad at me for using him as an example, is John DeLynn. He is relationally resilient through the I've had many conversations with him. Most of my conversations is him racking his brain, trying to figure out how to help another human being, does that make sense, who may need him, and vice versa, that interdependence, does that make sense? I'm not talking codependence, that interdependence. That is one reason why he is highly, highly relationally resilient. So I want to figure out what enables someone to be like John DeLynn. Now we're teaching that to kids in kindergarten to have that mentality that he has. I don't know when that mentality kicked in for him, whether that was in 3rd grade or when he was in college or different experience. I have to have another conversation with him, but that relational resilience is extremely, extremely powerful. You draw strength from the emotional support of others, and I can tell you, John DeLynn draws incredible strength from the emotional support of others. I've watched that over and over again. Sorry, I have to use you, John, because it's the only one that all of us have in common. But you realize that your greatest power comes from human connection. Mama Jackson was that relationship for me. One of my favorite examples is this guy, Dick and Rick Hoyt. They've been over 240 triathlons together. He'd been in the military, had gone through a difficult divorce and stuff. But when he became the lakes for his son, it completely transformed his life. Here, I'll play a little segment here for you.
This is where they go to prove their mettle. Endurance racers from around New England, ready to take on an Olympic distance triathlon. Those who finish will swim a mile, bike 24, and run 6 more. But one man's got a tougher challenge than the rest. And it's not because he's one of the oldest guys here. It's because Dick Hoyt will pull, pedal, and push his son Rick, who was born without the ability to move or speak. This is how father and son spend their time together, nearly every single weekend, going back 30 years. Dick and Rick Hoyt have completed over 240 triathlons, and on their lazier Sunday afternoons, over 68 marathons, the fastest in a time just half an hour off the world record. Yes, the real world record. They say Dick Hoyt could have been an elite endurance athlete on his own. Dick's not so sure.
I just don't have the desire. be out there learning about myself. I think it's just something that comes from his body to my body, and it makes us go faster.
Are you trying to say that you run faster pushing Rick than if you didn't run with him?
Oh yeah, he inspires me and he motivates me. And he's actually the athlete, and he's very competitive. He wants to win.
I love that. He's the athlete. He wants to win. He says, I'm not even motivated to do this. But, and he's been in 240 triathlons, but he became the legs for his son. Now that's relational resilience to the extreme, at what level that motivated him. Another example, quick example, is Harriet Tubman. She freed over 300 slaves in the Underground Railroad. They just put her on the $20 bill. She's finally getting her due, her justice. She was in all my Maryland history books growing up, but they didn't really tell me the real story. In history, sometimes you don't get the real story until you get a little old and you can actually study the history. And I was at her museum the other day, and it blew me out of the water because they said one of the techniques she used to keep these slaves walking with her is the slaves would want to turn back around. They hear the dogs coming through the woods, they see the lights coming, and she was actually standing up with a shotgun because they want to turn back around, and she would say, you have no choice, I will have to shoot you before you turn around. And they technically keep walking with her. And she ended up, the rest is history. She freed over 300 slaves in the Underground Railroad. Now, Jane Addams is the mother of my profession, social work. We started the whole houses in Chicago. But this is the grandmother of social work. She started the first retirement homes for African Americans in the United States. And she's finally getting her just due. And hopefully in the next 10 years, she'll be acknowledged as the grandmother of social work. You'll see soldiers coming home from war. They may be lost an arm, a leg, a limb. Oftentimes they'll say they want to go back. Do they usually want to go back for political reasons? No, they want to go back because of that camaraderie, that connection with their fellow soldiers. There's a time I got to skip this next one here. I got to share this story real quick. Mother Teresa is one of my favorite stories in the world. She went to get the Nobel Peace Prize several years ago, and the night before they had this huge banquet. They had dignitaries, presidents, all these famous people in town, and she says, I'm not going to go to the banquet. They're like, what? You've got to show up. We have all these people that are here to see you. We're honoring you with the Nobel Peace Prize. She's like, how much money are you guys spending on that banquet? And they tell her, and she's like, I'm not coming. She's like, give me the freaking cash. I'm not just trying to use the word freaking. She probably used other language. That's my childhood. And she asked for the cash. They gave her the cash, and she fed over 400 families for 3 years on the amount of money of an hour-and-a-half banquet. And that's why she's Mother Teresa. The rest is history. Powerful, powerful example of relational resilience. There's a time I got to skip a few of these stories here. So these are some of the emotions you can tap in with relational resilience. Well, I was in my office one day and it hit me that my business partner, his name's Hans, he has a tremendous amount of relational resilience. He has 5 children. He's highly motivated because he's the CEO of our company for all of our employees. He does a lot of community work. He's highly, highly motivated because of relationships. Now me, I have to really work on relational resilience. I'm married, have 2 kids, and even a couple of years ago, I traveled 260 days a year. Does that make sense? 260 days a year. Speaking, my relational resilience is about this much. I have almost 0 relational resilience. I have to really, really work. I get it technically, but in my personal life, it's something I have to really, really, really work at. And it's because that reactive attachment disorder is very easy for me to attach. I have huge trust issues. I've been burned. When your own parents kind of reject you, it's very hard to trust. And so I have to really work at it. Now this next one I'm going to share with you, I'm kind of in the genius range with. And one day it hit me, holy cow, it's called street resilience. I was like, if I could teach my business partner street resilience, and he already has relational resilience, I could double his resilience. If I who have street resilience could learn relational resilience, I could probably double my resilience. Everybody with me on that? Let me share with you what street resilience is in a little more sense. Now, street resilience is this. You take the pain of disrespect, social inequality, and mistakes and use it as fuel to propel you forward. Anybody here besides me made mistakes? I've made huge mistakes in my life. I was diagnosed as a child with conduct disorder. You have to really violate the rights of others to be diagnosed with conduct disorder. So I've made huge mistakes in my life. Now, at 46 years old, the only thing I know how to do is take those mistakes and say, okay, how can I be a better person today because of those mistakes? Someone asked me the other day, what's the And I told him the biggest thing that kills resilience is the ability to not forgive ourselves. In the book, you'll see I have a whole chapter on something called self-grace. Usually grace comes from something outside of us. If you can access that grace outside of you, knock yourselves out. But what I noticed in my own life, I forgive myself on Monday or Tuesday, but I beat myself up on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. Anybody do that besides me? And I'm like, all right, I've got to give myself grace. I've got to give myself grace. Like, we can't forgive ourselves. Resilience is a very, very hard thing to access. So one of the key ingredients of being resilient, kind of two things, is this ability to forgive ourselves and the ability to be vulnerable. We can't, how do human beings connect is through authenticity, really sharing what you're dealing with or a challenge that really causes people to connect. And that ties one more with the relational resilience. But so any type of disrespect, I was told I couldn't go to college because of my learning disabilities. I used that disrespect. I had a professor that said to me, look, Christian, if you get a college degree, my degree is worthless. I just found out that professor will be teaching out of 2 college textbooks that my program is in is evidence-based RTI, PBI, that's kind of introduction, kind of school social work books. And so he actually has to lecture on my theories now. How you like me now? Anyways, hold on. Then people say, well, you have an attitude problem. That's street resilience. So street resilience is having a little bit of an attitude. Does that make sense? But you've got to create a productive outcome with your attitude. If you hurt yourself or others with your attitude, there's a $100 billion industry that will lock you up for the rest of your life. But if you take that attitude and you do something productive, the sky's the limit. You direct your hurt and anger towards a cause rather than an individual. I say John Berlin is one of the most street resilient people I've met, just right there. You direct your hurt and anger towards a cause rather than an individual. He has a cause to help all human beings feel safe, no matter where they stand on this planet, no matter what their beliefs are. They need to be safe. We live in America, it's a free society. He's dedicated his life to helping create that. You have the ability to reframe your limitations, transform them into strengths. And one of my favorite examples of street resilience is Mandela. Everybody knows the story. He was in a prison camp for 27 years. He passed away a few years ago. Hundreds of millions of people tuned into his funeral. One of the most watched funerals from every nation all across this world. He broke up rock for 27 years on Robben Island. Sometimes the same security officer physically abused him, verbally abused him. He becomes the president of South Africa, and everybody knows the story. One of the first people he invites to his inauguration is one of the security officers, another security officer. He put him in his cabinet. And the prosecuting attorney that wanted the death penalty against Mandela, a couple weeks later, Mandela invites him to his presidential palace and says, look, I made huge mistakes. I understand why you wanted to seek the death penalty. I completely forgive you. I understand why you seek that. I want to create some connection here, some reconciliation. I want to be friends with you. I understand why you did what you did. It's okay, I get it. And when the guy walked out, the national media was there waiting for him there in South Africa. And he said, what do you think of Mandela now? The reporters asked him. And he said, Mandela is the most saintly man I've ever met. And I'll tell you right now, if Mandela was in this room, he would tell you he's no different than you. He has 2 eyes, he has a nose, he has a mouth, he's a human being. He said, because you hurt me, because you disrespect me, I'm going to become greater. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to make a bigger difference in this world. So you take people that have been disrespected. Has John Berlin ever been disrespected? Absolutely. So, but John, instead of he got really, he could have said, okay, I'm going to use this pain. I'm going to hurt people. But he said, I'm going to take this pain. And I'm going to help people heal. I want truth to be spread. I want light to be spread in this world. And he dedicated his life to that. Rosa Parks refusing to sit on the back of the bus. Powerful, powerful example of street resilience. Because the time to skip this, Abraham Lincoln, I just went to his presidential library and walked down this long hallway, and all these political cartoons pop up, and they say, ugly, buffoon, uneducated. You get into the hallway, and it says, this is what his own cabinet called him. And he took that disrespect, and we know the rest is U.S. history. Cesar Chavez, what he did for immigrant farm workers, are charging 25 cents for a cup of water. While they're out there working in the fields, making very little money. And that was a breaking point for Chavez. He used that and unionized, migrant farm workers. I've just finished reading a biography of his, and it blew me out of the water. In the 1970s, he was setting up pride parades in the 1970s. Think about how popular that is now. And he said, you know, when you see one disenfranchised group, you want to advocate for all of them. And I'd say during the 70s, he was sticking his neck out and really doing some incredible work. You know, Gandhi. One of my favorite examples is Michael Jordan getting cut. Everybody knows the story of Michael Jordan getting cut from the JV basketball team. Anybody see his Hall of Fame speech? By the way, anybody see his Hall of Fame speech? They said it's one of the worst, the national media says, one of the worst Hall of Fame speeches anybody's ever seen. And because they wanted Jordan to talk about relational resilience. They wanted Jordan to get up and say, my third grade teacher helped me. My dad put lights on the basketball court. But Jordan got up and gave the opposite speech. He got up and gave a speech on street resilience. Like I said, they didn't know what it was. And so now I'm doing a national campaign for Jordan, explaining to people his Hall of Fame speech. It's actually very brilliant if you know what street resilience is. Hopefully he pays me for this one day. Anyways, so I'm going to let me play this little clip for you here so you can see the street resilience. So look for the street resilience, and then we'll wind this up here pretty quick.
Nature has gone a long way from the first time I picked up any sport. Baseball, football, ran track, basketball, anything in this class, I played. When you think about, you know, so they started the fire in me. You know, that fire started with my parents. And then, as I moved on in my career, people added wood to that fire. Coach Smith, and what else can I say about him? You know, he's a legendary, coach. And then there's Leroy Smith. Now, you guys think that's a myth. Leroy Smith was a guy, when I got cut, he made the team on the varsity team. And he's here tonight. He's still the same 6'7" guy. He's not even bigger. His game is about the same. But he started that whole process with me because when he made the team and I didn't, I wanted to prove not just to Leroy Smith, not just to myself, but to the coach who actually picked Leroy over me. I wanted to make sure you understood you made a mistake, dude.
And he just gave Leroy street resilience, but he might not know what it is.
And Coach Smith, the day that he was on the Sports Illustrated and he named 4 starters and he didn't name me, that burned me up. Because I thought I belonged on that Sports Illustrated. Now, he had his own vision about giving a freshman that exposure, and I totally understand that, but from a basketball sense, I deserve to be on that Sports Illustrated. And you understand that. And then you had all your media naysayers. Oh, scoring charity can't win an NBA title, or, you know, you're not as good as Magic Johnson, not as good as Larry Bird. You're good, but you're not as good as those guys. You know, I had to listen to all this, and that put so much wood on that fire that it kept me each and every day trying to get better as a basketball player. Now, I'm not saying that they were wrong. I may have looked at it from a different perspective, you know, but at the same time, as a basketball player, I'm trying to become the best that I can, you know, and for someone like me who achieved a lot in over the time of my career, you look for any kind of messages that people may say or do to get you motivated to play the game of basketball at the highest level. Because that is when I feel like I excel at my best.
These next 2 places where resiliency comes from, I'm just going to highlight really fast for you and just end with a quick video clip. And I apologize when I hit these other 2 really quick, but it's easy to access the book, The Resilience Breakthrough, on Amazon, whatever. And I used to haul books with me all across the country and have books and sell stuff that about broke my back. And so I realized that people don't have the resilience to go access the book, it's probably not going to help you anyhow. And so, so let me share with you the next place resiliency comes from is something called resource resiliency. For example, this guy is fishing on this river. Did he put the river there? He's accessing a resource. He's using the fly rod. He's using the waders. You know, we cannot be done. We have to get help from other people. You can't see this. There's an army behind me that helped me put these presentations together, come up with these theories, put them in some type of deliverable form. I have a huge, huge support system. You recognize that your resilience can be increased by tapping into the resources available to you. You fight resignation with spontaneity. You recognize that your resources include relationships, physical assets, personality traits. Now, I told you mine. I'm only here talking to you because I can talk nonstop. I can draw really good. It's kind of bringing those worlds together. You realize that you have undeveloped talents and capabilities you can develop. I'm just going to share one example of this one because this will sum it up. You will get it after this. This guy, Kyle Maynard, born with no arms, no legs, just these little stubs. He recently hiked all the way to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro with rubber balls on the end of his stubs. And he's amazing. He wrestled in high school and college. I've been able to keynote a couple conferences with him. Last time I saw him, he's like, Christian, how do your two arms work for you? I'm like, really good. He's like, how do your legs work for you? I'm like, great. He's like, if I had access to your legs, your arms, I'd take a lot better care of myself. So I was like, man, I was kind of offended, but anyways, but coming from him, what do you say? You know what I mean? He's like, incredible, resource resiliency. So I went off the sword for about 5 minutes. Helen Keller, powerful example. I have a huge support system behind me. So everybody with me on resource resiliency, just maximizing the resources around you. And we tell people that they have to pull themselves up by the bootstraps, but we have to give them the laces, the bootstraps, to pull themselves up by.
Tell the story of the painting.
What's that, the painting?
Yeah.
Should I tell that real fast? I met this beautiful girl named Wendy, who was actually in the house. I appreciate John's like, you're not going to not pay tribute to her. Like, thank you, John. He's a much better man. Anyway, so if y'all can give Wendy a hand, she's actually here right now. I met this beautiful girl named Wendy. I thought, man, I'd love to marry her, but I don't know how to run a cash register at McDonald's. I broke up with her. I said, Wendy, you got to marry someone that works in the high-tech industry, somebody a little more functional than me that can make over $50,000 a year selling software or something. I broke up with her, and she came to me a couple days later. She's like, you know what, Christian, I know you're learning disabled. I know you're dumb, lazy, rebellious, attitude problem, troublemaker. And she literally got down on one knee with a ring and proposed to me and said, if you marry me, you never, ever have to worry about employment. I'll support you. I'll take care of you for the rest of your life. I looked down at her, I thought to myself, I may be learning disabled, but this homeboy ain't stupid. That's the woman for me. And I married her because I really did love her, not because I never had to work another day in my life. She's kind of manipulative. She took advantage of me because I started working 100 hours a week. Anyways, so we're married for about 3 years. She got laid off of her job. I lost my job. And things were looking pretty bleak. Our rent was $300. And we had a red Chevy Cavalier. I remember going out to the red Chevy Cavalier, kind of sizing it up, thinking, we'll just move into this car, we'll go up in the canyon for a little while, and earn the money, and then we'll come back down the canyon, whatever, and we'll be all right. And so I started having a panic attack as I was looking at the car, and I ran back in the house. I'm like, Wendy, I told you not to marry me. You should have, married somebody else. We're in this situation because of you. I started just verbally abusing her. I'm a therapist, I'm aware. And so she gets angry, she leaves the house. I'm like, man, I better come up with something. And so the only gift I had, I could talk, I could draw, and down in the river bottoms, there in Provo, they have those big multi-million-dollar homes there in the river bottoms. So I took a couple pictures of a few houses and started doing watercolor paintings of the houses. This is actually a house in San Francisco I painted, but I did some watercolor paintings, and then I knocked on the door of the house, and I'd say, I'm a local artist in the area. I was admiring your beautiful home. I'd like to sell you this painting for $200. The first house I knocked on, the woman of the house came to the door and literally gasped at the painting. She goes, where did you get that painting? I looked at the flowers, the roses, and all this stuff. She's just going nuts over the painting. She goes, I'll be back in a minute. She comes back 5 minutes later with a check, and she says, I have artwork in my house. I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on that I don't like as much as this painting. I'm going to give you $600. And when she handed me that check, I floated off the porch because I had the $300 for rent and $300 left over. So I know if I never got invited, to speak again, I can go paint rich people's houses and put food into my kids' stomach. That makes me what? Resource resilient. Everybody with me on that? It's just maximizing those talents and those abilities that you have around you. And then the last place that resiliency comes from is something called rock bottom resilience. I think all of us sometimes during our lives will feel like we're at the bottom of that staircase. You see words like depression, no hope, addiction, lost my home now. Remember with resilience isn't something that you try to obtain in the future. You can obtain resilience in the here and now. All we can do is be resilient and flip the switch and say the reality of where we stand, and the reality of our anxiety, the reality of our depression. It's not something that we have to go out and seek into the do is push through in the reality of where we are. I mean, it's not something, it's not perfection. There's one thing I cannot stand is the word perfection. Does that make sense? Resilience is bouncing back. And think about it. What do you have to bounce back is what? You have to have a problem. And so problems are very important. Having some type of pain is important to push through. The ability to take that pain and create a productive outcome, that's the secret. But it's not something you have to obtain in the future. It's just the reality of where you are. You know, a homeless man that picks up bottles all day, sleeps under a bridge, picks up bottles all day, may be more resilient than me with all the resources I have if I disrespected my wife or my kids. Everybody with me on that? It has nothing to do with success. It's this ability to bounce back. You refuse to be defined by the negative labels you've been given by yourself or others. You're able to believe in potential unforeseen options. You take control of the present, knowing that losing the past does not equal losing in the future. Everyone has a personal rock bottom. You know, I have had huge personal rock bottoms. At 46 years old, I'd say, okay, I'm going to use that worst moment as my best friend. If I was your therapist, I know that seems scary after hearing me so far. If I was your therapist, the first thing I do in therapy is I'd figure out what the worst thing to happen to you ever was. And then I would show you step by step, how can you use that worst moment as like a nuclear fuel rod of energy? How can you use it to create productive outcomes and not give up? And like I say in the book, we have 27 specific strategies of how to do that. You know, one day it hit me, I can learn more from a single mom living in a car with 3 kids than if I study, you know, my friend Cubby or Anthony Robbins. By the time you have a helicopter, you ought to be resilient. Everybody on that? You see that lady's face down the right? This is during the famous Dorothy Langford picture during the Great Depression. Sometimes I don't have the language for resilience. But you see her face, that grit on her face, she's not going on shutdown. I can tell you 3 months after that picture was taken, her kids still may be hungry. They still might be living in that tent. But she is not giving up. All she's going to do is be resilient in the reality of where she's standing. Everybody on that? That's all she can do. That's all any of us can do. You know, this is the first 6 times that Robert Downey was arrested. He wasn't willing to change. It was that 7th time, that rock bottom moment that he used to make that change. Now, I want to end with, this is a quick clip. This is during the 1992 Olympics. A guy by the name of Derek Redmond came in last place in the 1992 Olympics. Very few people remember who came in first place during that race, but millions and millions of people know who Derek Redmond is. Now, I'm going to, as you're watching this, I want you to think about all 4 of these sources I just quickly flashed you through. And by the way, there's a 5th place that resiliency comes from. I just put it under relational resilience. And it's your relationship with something bigger than you, whatever that is. It could be the chair you're sitting in. It could be that cool baseball hat. It could be the mountains. It could be the universe. It could be a higher power. Does that make sense? Whatever bigger than you. There's quite a bit of research shows that can impact putting one foot in front of another. Like I say, I just put that under relational resilience. And so, actually, while I'm hearing this, I'll just show you this real fast. When I'm teaching this to kids, this might be of interest to you. On flipping the switch, I just, like with Y-Try, I made some slides on how we teach, like the emotional fuel right here, how we teach relational resilience. We use the metaphor of the geese flying. As one of the geese blocks the wind, as it blocks the wind for the other geese, they rotate. And you can see that interdependence. If one of the geese goes down, the other geese go down with it. Now, this next metaphor, this should translate here in Logan. You have this truck rolling down the road, a storm comes, and you have a rock slide or mudslide. As you put the rocks in the back, on the rocks are written the words like discrimination, mistakes. Now, I've never done this myself because I did not grow up on a farm or around a farm. Is this a true principle? If you put the rocks in the back of the truck and it's stuck in the mud, the traction kicks in. Anybody experience this? All right, he's not. All right, that's legit. All right. And so, everybody see what I'm saying? Is you take the rocks, you take the pain, the mistakes in your life, you take that adversity, you put it in the back of that truck. It can help get you unstuck. So this is how. So we're literally teaching this from kindergarten all the way through death row, from the playpen to the state pen. And the reason why we're able to teach this K through death row is because if they learn visually, we teach them visually. They learn auditory. We just kind of took evidence-based mental health practice and started delivering it in a kind of multi-sensory delivery system here. You have to be able to tap into your external resources and internal resources, and then rock bottom. And I'll just wrap this up. I just want to play this quick clip so you can see the 4 sources of resiliency in action here in this clip, and we'll be done here. one reason I love having John DeLynn as a friend. He's one of the few people that knows how to set a boundary with me. Get me off of the stage here. No, they're going to ask Derek Redmond to get off. He's going to tear his hamstring. They're going to ask him to get off the track. He's going to refuse to get off the track. That's street resilience. You're going to see his, this is his rock bottom moment. For him to get to the Olympics, he had to maximize his physical body, the resource resilience. He had to maximize those resources. And this is like his rock bottom moment. And you're going to see his relational resilience show up. They're going to ask him to get off the track, and you're going to see some relational resilience show up as well. So look for those 4 sources of resilience, and we'll be done here. Time to cut that a little bit short, but all of us have emotional tears every day in our lives. The ability to flip that switch and take those emotional tears and say, I'm going to be a better husband because of that. I'm going to be a better wife, a better employer, a better employee. I'm going to be a greater human being. I'm going to tap into that relational, that stream. And nothing special about John's story, my story, Mandela's story. The ability, someone taught us how to use that pain as a reason to not give up, to tap into that relational, that street resiliency, that rock bottom. And like I said, it literally can be taught. And like I said, I was told in college that you cannot hand someone resilience. You cannot teach resilience. In 2016, we have proven that resilience is a learned skill. You can teach resilience, and it's one of the greatest rushes in the world. And please learn, access this book, and share it. Let people know. In 2016, we do know where resilience comes from. We know how John DeLynn does what he does. There you go. All right, thank you guys.
again for Christian Lord. You guys want to know what it looks like a week after that injury happens? I was running with Clara. I was beating her too. Claire's really fast. We were running out in the field outside our house. My leg pops and I face plant in the grass. But it gets better. So I can relate. I'm like tearing up just watching that. That was great. So Christian's brilliant. Buy his book, share it with everyone. I'm grateful for you, Christian, for your friendship, Wendy, for sharing Christian and supporting him. We know that there's no way he could do what he does without your support and love. And I'm sure your sons sacrifice a little bit to be able to allow you to help others. So we want to let's honor Christian's family as well. So to close, we're going to have Nick back up to share one more song. But before you come up, we have to pay a fee to use this facility, and those fees come from people making donations. Many of you donate. We donate through the PayPal link in the Cache Valley Oasis group. That's a way it just comes out of our paycheck just monthly, and that's what we do to try and help. For those of you who donate through that PayPal link, thank you. Please donate there. We also pass around a little box as well. So I'm just going to invite, is it Ryan who's coming up? Who's coming up? Is someone coming up? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, Ryan, come on up for a second. He's going to give you the talk. Jeremy, start that when the music runs. Is that all right? Hold that for just 1 second. Jeremy, come on up. Ryan, come on up real quick. He's going to give you the talk, and then we're going to have one more song from Nick. Come on up.
My talk will be short. I'm just grateful for these opportunities to come and gather, and it does take some donations from all of you, and so it takes donation of time, but it also takes donations of money, and so we very much appreciate all those who have signed up to do monthly donations and those who give to the box when it passes around to help pay the rent and to help have these great meetings, and we hope to keep these up. We've used those donations to help with setting up our exempt status with the IRS. That costs money. Unfortunately, tax returns cost money. It all does have some financial responsibilities involved. So again, we're so grateful for everyone who donates, and again, we ask you to keep doing that. And we learn that when we donate to the things we love, we get to keep those things around, and they bring us joy. And so we really appreciate it. We ask you to keep doing it. Thanks.
So now what we'll do is we'll bring Nick up for a final performance. We're grateful for his talent and sharing that with us. We want to thank everyone who's joined us on the internet. And while Nick's playing, we're going to pass around this little box. And please make sure everybody gets it. And if you have a little bit of money, you can throw in there. We count 2 people, financially transparent. Nobody is pocketing this money. It's going directly towards paying for this facility. So we'll turn the time over to Nick for one more quick song. And Laura, if you could start passing that box around, that'd be great.
Can we get one more round of applause for Christian? That was so good. Super inspiring stuff.
Nick, is there a way to follow you on social media, or do you have a website or anything?
My name's Nick Welch. Welch like the juice.
Nick Welch.
Give me a Google.
On Google.
Yeah.
All right, Nick Welch, everybody. All right, thanks, Nick. Thanks so much. We have a lot of people to thank again. Christian, thank you so much for coming. We're honored to have you here. Amelia Goodkey, thank you not only for giving the community moment today, but also for organizing the child's room. Robert in the back is always here for his technical support. Thank you, Robert. Jeremy helped to organize this today. Amy Wengert sort of organizes these meetings as kind of the main organizer. She's in Europe right now. We want to thank her. Anyone who's coordinating the children's room. DePriest is always so generous to help out with refreshments, and other people help her as well. So everyone on her committee, thank you. If any of you want to be a speaker or want to nominate a speaker or a musical guest or share a community moment, please feel free to reach out on Facebook to me or Amy. You can also email cachevalley.oasis@gmail.com to let us know. Remember to like the Cache Valley Oasis Facebook page, look for upcoming events. And we're done. So thank you again for joining us. We will have refreshments out in the back. And then it may be that a few of us go to Even Stevens afterwards to grab a sandwich. So if anyone wants to show up there, you're welcome to join us. But most importantly, please join us in the back for some refreshments. Thanks again for coming. We'll see you in 2 weeks if you're able to make it. Thanks so much. And thanks to Carson for filming. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.